You know, there has been a movement for the last, oh gosh, it's over 100 years, to anatomize people's motivations, to make people's motivations physical. Freud, of course, was the great pioneer in this. All your motivations come from your sex drive. Every word you say really is related to your sex drive. You say this, but you really mean something about your sex drive. Everything is related to eros. You know, it's this physical thing that is just being expressed in fake spiritual terms. Even your belief in God, it's just a new, you know, it's just an expression of your sex drive. Now it's moved on, now that Freud has been not totally debunked, but a lot of this part of it has been debunked. We've moved on to evolutionary biology, right? This idea that everything is because of something that you developed as you were going from being a monkey to being a human being. And by the way, some people don't believe in going from being a gorilla to being a human being, but it happened to me just this morning. So I think I have to say it must be real. But the point is, now they say, oh, well, I've heard people say, oh, art developed because we had to learn about the savannah, so we learned to paint landscapes. I mean, nonsense, just so stories about how things come to be. And we talk about all motivations now as if we say, oh, that girl is beautiful because you can see that she is, fertile by the way she looks. And anybody who's ever been around women for a long time knows that women become more beautiful the nicer they are. I mean, the more you like them, the more beautiful they become. It has nothing to do with their fertility. It has to do with the spiritual relationship between you and the woman that you're talking to. The spirit comes first. You know, I was reading Discover magazine. I should really talk about this in another section, but I just briefly, it was about a guy who wanted to get rid of his religious feelings. And so he started talking about how, oh, this is what happens in the brain, you know, when you have religious feelings, and therefore it's just the brain doing this stuff. And I thought, well, something happens in the brain when it's raining out too. And I see that it's raining, something happens to the brain. That doesn't mean it's not raining, you know. Just because something happens to your brain when you experience God doesn't mean there's no God. That's silly logic. So everything is bent on eliminating the spirit, on eliminating spiritual methods. But let me tell you something. I don't think there's one motive for human actions, but certainly one of the largest motives is the display of virtue. And that comes from the fact that we are fallen creatures who know that we are not what we're supposed to be. There is not one of us on earth who thinks he is what he is supposed to be. Not one, no, not one. Unless he's a psychopath, unless he's a serial killer or something like that. You know, the people who are saying, no, they are not what they're supposed to be. And they spend, if you listen to the way people talk, if you listen to the way you talk, like maybe 85% of what you say is meant to signal to other people that you are a good person because you know you're not. And the delusion is that you can sell yourself to a good person when he knows you're not too. I mean, he knows you're not as well because he knows what he is and he knows what you are. This thing about virtue, if we looked at virtue the way people look at evolutionary biology and Freudian nonsense about your sex drives, if we thought about that as a motivation, a key motivation, we would understand so much more of the world and why people are doing this stuff. I think it is a sin that Google is turning its staff into these thought Nazis instead of teaching them tolerance for disagreement. By removing this guy, by firing this guy, they have given credence and encouragement to the worst in humankind. Not that these people are the worst people, but simply one of the worst things we do is signal our virtue instead of turning to God in truth and saying, I'm a sinner. You know, I am a broken guy. And then, by the way, one of the wonderful things about coming to Christianity for me is understanding myself in those terms made me see other people realistically and more forgivingly.